Emma's mornings started the same way: coffee brewing, sunlight spilling across the wooden floor of her cozy kitchen in Vermont, and laughter echoing from the other side of the table. That laughter usually came from Claire, her best friend since college, who had a way of making any morning feel warmer. Claire lived just a few blocks away and had practically become part of Emma and Daniel's family over the years. To anyone looking from the outside, the three of them seemed like a perfect little circle of love, trust, and friendship. Emma had met Daniel during her senior year at the University of Vermont. He was quiet, thoughtful, with a calm presence that steadied her. They fell in love quickly but deeply, the kind of love that wasn't loud but steady, like a safe harbor. They got married 2 years later in a small ceremony by Lake Champlain, with Claire standing right beside Emma as her maid of honor. Claire cried during the vows. Emma thought it was sweet. Looking back, she wasn't so sure. Over the years, Claire remained a constant. She was the one who helped Emma redecorate the guest room when their first child was born. She showed up with soup when Emma had the flu and took care of the baby when Daniel was out of town. Claire never dated seriously, always saying she hadn't found the right one. Emma used to tease her about it. "You're just too picky," she'd laugh. But Claire would just shrug and smile. The first time Emma noticed something strange, it was a small thing. They were having dinner, just the three of them, and Claire laughed at one of Daniel's jokes. But the way she looked at him, it wasn't just laughter. It lingered. Her eyes softened in a way that Emma had never noticed before. Daniel didn't see it. Or maybe he pretended not to. Emma brushed it off. But once you see something, you can't unsee it. More moments followed. Claire would come over even when Emma wasn't home, dropping off food or books for Daniel. She'd ask Emma questions like, "Do you ever worry Daniel gets bored at home?" and laugh like it was just a joke. Emma started feeling uncomfortable, but she didn't know how to say it out loud. Claire was her best friend. Her only close friend, really. She felt crazy for even thinking such thoughts. Then one afternoon, Emma walked into the kitchen to find Claire and Daniel talking quietly. They stopped the moment she entered, and the silence felt too quick, too heavy. Claire smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night, Emma lay awake while Daniel slept beside her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even sure she had a reason to be. But something had shifted. A feeling had crept into her heart, and it wouldn't leave. It was the feeling of being on the outside of your own story. She remembered how Daniel used to look at her during their early years, like she was the only person in the room. Now his eyes seemed distant, kind, but distracted. He wasn't cold. He still brought her coffee in the mornings, still asked about her day. But the warmth wasn't the same. Emma tried to push away her doubts, but they followed her everywhere. At dinner parties, she saw Claire leaning just a little too close to Daniel. During movie nights, she noticed Claire watching Daniel more than the screen. Emma told herself she was imagining things until one day she wasn't. They were at the farmer's market, and Emma stepped away to look at flowers. When she turned back, she saw Claire gently brush something off Daniel's shoulder. A small touch, but too intimate, too familiar. Emma didn't say anything on the drive home. She just stared out the window and let the silence stretch between them. That night, as she stood by the window, watching the trees sway in the wind, a thought came to her clearly for the first time. Claire is in love with my husband. It was a painful realization. Not because of betrayal, but because of how slowly it had crept into her life. Like a shadow that had always been there, waiting for the right moment to show itself. Emma didn't confront anyone. She didn't scream or accuse. She simply started watching more carefully. And the more she watched, the more certain she became. It wasn't just Claire. Daniel was changing too. He smiled more when Claire was around. He seemed more alive. He never crossed any obvious lines. But something unspoken had settled between them, and Emma could feel it every day. The hardest part wasn't the possible betrayal. It was the loss of connection, the quiet inner marriage, the loneliness in a house that used to feel full. Emma had always believed in fighting for love. But now she was beginning to wonder, what if love wasn't something you fought for? What if it was something you set free when it no longer felt like yours? She kept that question to herself, but it stayed with her through every dinner, every silent night. And every moment Claire smiled too brightly at her husband. And in the back of her mind, another thought whispered, maybe one day I'll have to make a choice neither of them sees coming. Emma couldn't stop the growing storm inside her heart. The more she saw Claire with Daniel, the heavier the silence between her and Daniel became. She tried to ignore the signs, telling herself she was overthinking. But deep down, she knew it was real. The way Claire looked at Daniel wasn't just friendly anymore, it was something more. Something Emma couldn't name but could feel in every glance and every smile. Daniel, meanwhile, stayed kind and gentle with Emma, but the spark in his eyes when he looked at her had faded. He seemed distracted, like his mind was somewhere else even when he was sitting right beside her. Emma wondered if he even realized it. Did he know Claire felt that way about him? Did he feel it too? She didn't want to believe it, but the truth pressed against her like a shadow she couldn't shake. One afternoon, Emma came home early from work. The house was quiet. Claire's car was in the driveway. Emma's heart pounded, but she told herself to stay calm. She opened the door to the kitchen and saw Claire and Daniel sitting close together at the table, talking quietly. The moment Claire noticed Emma, she quickly straightened up and smiled. Daniel looked up too, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a moment that passed too fast for Emma to understand. Emma said nothing. Instead, she walked into the living room and sat down, pretending to be busy with her phone. But inside, she felt broken. She wondered how long this had been going on. How many secret moments had she missed? That night, Emma lay awake while Daniel slept beside her. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts raced. She replayed the day, trying to make sense of what she saw. She remembered Claire's eyes, soft and searching. She remembered Daniel's quiet voice, the way he looked at Claire like she was something special. Emma felt a deep sadness settle in her chest. She wasn't angry, not really. It was more like heartbreak. The kind of hurt that comes when someone you love starts slipping away slowly without saying a word. Over the next few weeks, Emma watched more closely. She noticed Claire texting Daniel late at night and Daniel smiling at his phone in a way he never had before. At social gatherings, Claire found excuses to sit near Daniel. And they shared jokes and small touches that made Emma's stomach twist. Emma confronted herself with questions she didn't want to ask out loud. Was Daniel unhappy with her? Did Claire want something she couldn't give? Was love something you could lose without ever meaning to? She tried to talk to Daniel about it carefully at first. One evening while they were cooking dinner, Emma asked, "Do you ever feel like something is missing between us?" Daniel looked surprised but shook his head. "No, I love you, Emma. Why would you say that?" Emma didn't answer. She wanted to believe him, but her heart whispered otherwise. The distance grew between them, not with fights or anger, but with quiet moments that stretched too long. Emma felt invisible in her own marriage. It was like she was watching their lives from outside, helpless to stop the slow drift. One rainy afternoon, Emma met Claire for coffee. She had to say something, but words failed her. Instead, she watched Claire's face, soft, nervous, and full of feelings Emma hadn't seen before. Finally, Emma said, "Do you? Like him? Really like him?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, I didn't want to feel this way. I never meant to hurt you." Emma nodded, fighting back her own tears. "I'm not angry, but I can't pretend anymore." They sat in silence, the weight of truth settling around them. Emma realized that love wasn't just about keeping someone close. Sometimes it was about knowing when to step back. At home, Emma decided to focus on herself for the first time in years. She started writing again, pouring her pain and hope onto paper. She found strength in her solitude, and slowly she began to understand that love could be more than just possession. It could be freedom. Daniel noticed the change in her too. One evening, he asked gently, "Are you okay, Emma?" She looked at him and smiled sadly. "I'm learning to be." But in her heart, Emma knew a choice was coming, one that would change everything. And deep down, she hoped love would still find a way to heal all three of their hearts. The quiet tension in Emma's life had built up like a storm ready to break. She felt torn between what she wanted and what she knew was happening. Daniel's attention was no longer fully hers. and Claire's feelings for him were no longer hidden. Emma's heart ached every time she saw the three of them together. But she also realized that forcing the truth out with anger would only shatter everything. So she waited. One chilly October evening, Emma found herself alone with Daniel. The house was calm, shadows dancing softly from the fireplace. For the first time in months, Emma decided to face the silence between them. She looked at Daniel and asked the question she had rehearsed many times but never spoken aloud. Do you still love me, Daniel? Or are you just staying because you think you should? Daniel's face changed. He hesitated, eyes searching hers. The truth hung in the air, heavier than either of them expected. He admitted quietly, Emma, I don't want to hurt you, but something has changed between us. I'm not sure what I feel anymore. Emma didn't cry or yell. Instead, she felt a strange calm settle over her. The honesty she had waited for was finally here, even if it wasn't what she hoped for. They talked late into the night, not with blame or anger, but with the raw truth that love can sometimes fade, even when it's real. Days passed, and Emma thought about Claire more than ever. She wondered if Claire felt guilt or if she was just caught in the same confusion. One afternoon, Emma invited Claire to their favorite coffee shop. The air was thick with unsaid words as they sat across from each other. Emma looked directly at her and said, If you love him, Claire, I won't stand in the way anymore. But please, don't lie to me or pretend this isn't real. Claire's eyes filled with tears. Emma, I never wanted to come between you two. I love him, yes, but I never meant for this to happen. Emma nodded slowly, a bittersweet smile touching her lips. Then maybe it's time it did. From that moment, Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of fighting to hold on to Daniel, she chose to let go. It wasn't easy. It felt like stepping off a cliff without knowing if she would fall or fly. But Emma believed love was more than possession. It was about truth and freedom. The days that followed were full of quiet changes. Emma moved some of her things out of the house and found a small apartment nearby. Daniel and Claire grew closer, their connection undeniable but gentle. Emma watched without bitterness, learning to accept what was happening. Her friends and family didn't understand at first. They asked why she would let go instead of fighting harder. But Emma knew something they didn't, that sometimes the strongest love is the one that lets go, even if it breaks your heart. She focused on herself, on healing and growing. She spent time with new friends, took long walks by the river, and began writing again. The pain of losing Daniel was real, but it was softened by the hope that everyone involved could find happiness in their own way. Emma's relationship with Claire changed too. It wasn't the same friendship they once had, but it wasn't filled with hatred either. They shared moments of quiet understanding, a recognition that life had shifted, but love could still exist in different forms. One crisp evening, Emma stood by the window of her new apartment, looking out at the falling leaves. She thought about Daniel and Claire, about the love that had slipped away and the love she still carried inside her. She whispered to herself, I let her have him because sometimes love means letting go. And with that, Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It was the beginning of a new chapter of story, not about losing, but about finding strength in unexpected places. 2 years later, Emma's life looked very different. She lived alone in a small cottage by a peaceful lake in Maine. The house was quiet, filled with books and the soft light of early mornings. She spent her days writing letters, poems, stories, anything that helped her heal. The pain from before hadn't disappeared, but it had softened. Like a wound that no longer stings but leaves a gentle scar. Emma rarely saw Daniel or Claire now. Their paths crossed only a few times, always polite, always distant. Daniel and Claire never married, but they stayed together in a relationship that seemed calm and steady. Emma had accepted that chapter of her life had closed, but she held no bitterness. In fact, she felt a surprising peace. She had learned something important. Love doesn't always look like the fairy tale we dream about. Sometimes it's messy, complicated, and full of loss. But sometimes love also teaches us how to be brave and kind in ways we never expected. Emma's friends often asked if she regretted letting Daniel go. She would smile softly and say, "No. Sometimes the hardest choice is the one that saves your heart." She knew that holding on when love was slipping away would have only caused more pain for everyone involved. Letting go had been her way to protect herself, and in a quiet way. To protect them, too. On a bright spring day, Emma sat by the lake, watching the water ripple in the breeze. She thought about how much she had changed. The woman she was before seemed distant, more fearful, more desperate to hold tightly to what she had. Now, she felt stronger because she had learned to trust herself and to believe that happiness could come in unexpected forms. Sometimes, she would remember the laughter they all shared years ago, the dinners, the coffee mornings, the quiet moments of friendship that had once felt so perfect. She missed those times but didn't long for them the way she used to. Instead, she wished for everyone to find their own kind of happiness, even if it wasn't together. Emma's heart had room again for love, for friendship, and for new beginnings. She had discovered that peace wasn't about holding on to someone else, but about finding herself. Her story wasn't the usual kind of love story. There was no dramatic ending or bitter fight. Instead, there was something quieter, softer, a story of letting go, of understanding, and of growing. Emma had given Daniel and Claire the freedom to be together. And in doing so, she had given herself the freedom to be whole again. It wasn't easy, and it hadn't come quickly. But it was real, as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky with pink and gold. Emma felt a gentle smile spread across her face. She whispered to the evening breeze, "Love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go." And in that moment, she knew she had found something better than heartbreak. She had found peace.